Hey, I have two books that I would like to tell you about today. They are both books that are written for adults. They are both fiction, written by Indigenous American authors that feature Indigenous American characters. The first of these books is called Winter Counts, and this book is by David Heska Wanbli Wyden. He is an enrolled citizen of the Sicangu Lakota Nation, and I would classify this book as Indigenous crime fiction, although it's sort of written in the style of a Western. It takes place on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, and it features a character named Virgil Wounded Horse. He is a member of the Lakota Nation, though he is only half Lakota. And he is an enforcer or a vigilante. He's hired by people on the reservation to carry out justice that has not been served. He charges $100 a broken bone, which is an interesting detail. So Virgil's nephew, Nathan, lives with Virgil because his own parents died in a car accident. And at the beginning of the story, Nathan gets involved with drugs, partly unwittingly, but he's pulled into this world of using and carrying and dealing drugs. And as Nathan's guardian, and also just as someone who cares deeply about what happens on the reservation, Virgil becomes obsessed with finding the dealer who's bringing these increasingly dangerous drugs onto the reservation. So that is really the outline of the crime fiction piece of this. But this book is also very much an examination of a really broken criminal justice system, which is why enforcers like Virgil are needed in the first place. In the book, Wyden brings up the Major Crimes Act of 1885, which forbade Native nations from prosecuting crimes that occur on their land. The cases for the crimes that happen on reservations are sent to federal authorities. The problem is, a lot of the time, the federal authorities decline to prosecute them. There is this loophole and this space where crimes can be committed without consequence. And so that is why Virgil takes it upon himself to dole out punishment for those crimes. The book is also a meditation on Native identity. Through the course of the book, Virgil becomes increasingly reinterested in spiritual aspects of the Lakota Nation. So there's a lot of information about that in the story as well. The book can also be very funny at times. Virgil is a really interesting character. He's got sort of a dry sense of humor, but he's also, he's a vigilante, so he's also pretty tough. So it's a very interesting read. The combination of the crime fiction, mystery aspect, then the social commentary, and the cultural pieces. So I really recommend Winter Counts by David Heska Wanbli Wyden. I believe that it's just an introduction to Virgil Wounded Horse, that there will be more books coming out with him. The second book that I want to tell you about today is this book called The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And this book is an edge of your seat thriller. This book starts out very intense and it just keeps ramping up the intensity. But it is also very thought-provoking. It deals with generational trauma. It deals with racism and colonialism. The story starts with four young Blackfeet men. They're four really good friends, Ricky, Lewis, Gabe, and Cass. And they are hunting on the reservation, and they cross a boundary into an area where only the elders are allowed to hunt, and they kill elk there. So they are breaking this big rule on the reservation. And there's one elk in particular during this hunt who's very difficult to kill. And after the hunt, in the years following, the men are all haunted in different ways by the memory of this particular day. These men are also literally haunted by an elk woman who has come to seek vengeance for that day and for the hunt. And she makes the rounds, visiting each of these four friends individually. And throughout this, we are introduced to the men and their thoughts. We learn about the reservation life around them. We see that there's sort of this cultural resurgence that's happening on the reservation, which underscores for them the importance of holding on to their traditions and their rituals. The physical descriptions of the reservation that Graham Jones writes are beautiful, and they are very detailed. They show the importance that the reservation holds for these men. Graham Jones is a really, really great writer. He has written so many books. Another part of the reservation life that's really interesting and important in this book is the basketball. And we see a lot of that coming through Gabe's daughter, Denora. She's a very talented basketball player, like other women before her have been. And she's a really strong female character. And we learn through these scenes the importance of basketball on reservation life, or resball. And if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, you can look it up and learn about its importance for reservation life. Denora is also a good example of showing where that generational trauma piece comes in and what she's inherited from her parents and their parents before them. So this book is a rich and important social commentary, but it is also so scary, and it's very gory, really gory. It's just horror. It's a real horror book. It's impossible to put down, though. It is so, so good. I'm not normally drawn to horror, and I read this book in almost one sitting, because it was so well written and the story was so compelling, and it was really, really scary. I also want to mention as a bonus another book by Stephen Graham Jones that I just read called Mapping the Interior. And this is a very slim volume. It's like 108 pages, and it is about a young boy named Junior who is visited by the spirit of his dead father in the middle of a sleepwalking episode that he has. And it is not long, but it is an extremely powerful exploration of the tangled web of memory that's told through this narrative that merges sort of dark fantasy and horror with a classic coming-of-age story. The book asks the question of what are the relationships between memory and trauma and healing and loss. It also has its fair share of gore, but Junior was a great character. His brother Dino was a great character. His mother was a great character. So if you want to read some Stephen Graham Jones, but you're looking for something really short, I would recommend Mapping the Interior.